Mikhail Shaidorov, the Olympic champion 2026 Olympic breakdown. His big interview after having a really big break. This is the first time that he's actually publishing his story and talking about what it actually took to become the Olympic champion, how the Federation of Kazakhstan didn't really support him as much as they probably should have for an Olympic champion. He wanted to break down that, well, the main theme of all this research that I did was that Kazakhstan didn't create an Olympic champion. They almost were losing one because of what they didn't support him throughout. And essentially, Mikhail Shaidorov wanted to take a pause after the Olympics and not talk to a lot of media, just to collect his thoughts, to think about it, to reflect. He also suffered a really big fever for 3 to 4 weeks, where he was constantly in bed, and I think it was just mental and physical fatigueness. And now he's ready to talk about his journey and talk about success. The interview kind of breaks down the craziest myth that success and talent doesn't create champions in sport. It's all about hard work, because Shaidorov described, instead of just having talent, you need to also have other things to support you. And he described that he had very little ice time, where essentially they, at one point with his dad, training at a shopping center in Kazakhstan, with the ice time that they had, it was very limited. There was almost no funding given when he started out, because the federations only give out to if you've made it to the national team and if you have medal placement. Family sacrifices. The dad had to sell his car in order for Mikhail Shaidorov to fund for his career, because money was tight and the family is the sponsors for the athlete's career. There was constant adaptation. They moved from city to city, and then they even moved to Russia, where they started training in Sochi because they had better funding, they had a better school there. And for Mikhail Shaidorov to progress and really go into his skating career, he needed to move away from Kazakhstan. That didn't have a lot of resources nor a lot of support to be able to grow as an athlete. There were always constant political obstacles and injuries that happened along the way, but also that he also had to seek private sponsors instead of getting that state support that he really needed. He only got state support 1 year before the Olympics, when he actually was placing second in the Grand Prix and was getting these medals. We're going to discuss what the whole situation is needed and why Kazakhstan gave very little support. Only until he was starting to get medals did they fund his career, and not even always, because he had to seek private sponsorship as well. So the first major obstacle that Mikhail Shaidorov really undertook was that in Kazakhstan there was not a lot of infrastructure. There wasn't a lot of ice rinks, there weren't a lot of coaches, there wasn't a lot of resources that he can really do full time. There was simply just not enough ice. And his father, a multi-time Kazakhstan champion and coach, had also very little access to training facilities. So instead, their daily practices looked like they were trained off ice a lot of the time. They used other surfaces instead of just the ice. They waited until winter, when the ice rinks were open to the public, to start skating. And just imagine trying to create an Olympic champion while only occasionally having access to the actual environment needed to train. Essentially, having no resources gives you very limited time compared to, say, Russia, that has such an elite system that goes on. They have multiple ice rinks, they have choreography halls, they have recovery centers, they have jumping harnesses, they have so much. So of course, when you go to the international stage, when a individual that competes for Kazakhstan that has very limited resources and a person that competes from Russia that has so many resources, of course there's going to be indifferences and they're going to place higher than the people from Kazakhstan. Shaidorov didn't have all these resources growing up, but he had his father as a coach and he tried to do as much as he could. Shaidorov's father was a figure skater in the USSR and dealt with very limited resources, so they tried to adapt as much as they could. When ice rinks weren't open, they trained on dry, hard court. And so with this adaptation, he kind of passed it on with Mikhail Shaidorov that you can train anywhere as long as you have the ambition, you have the drive, and you want to do it. So because Kazakhstan couldn't offer these resources, they moved to Sochi. The dad sold his car in order to move all the way to Russia, to Sochi, to train with Alexei Yurmanov. And the reason why this whole transition even happened was when Mikhail Shaidorov was at a training camp with Alexei Yurmanov's group, he really enjoyed it, and Alexei really saw something within Mikhail Shaidorov and invited him to Sochi to train with him. Within the span of 2 weeks of that training camp, he really saw big progression. I think he came from skating a double axel to doing triple axels, and learning how to do quad jumps. And so they made the decision to move to Russia in order to train. And he saw very big progression. The conditions improved drastically. There was daily ice finally. He was training properly 6 to 8 hours as an athlete. He had specialists, and everything slowly adapted, where he started learning triples, triple combination, doing quad combinations as well. Everything, rapid progression within the span of 1 year of working with Alexei Yurmanov's group. So again, this just suggests that he was already very talented. He just lacked the environment in order to support him. And that move to Russia really helped him to develop as the athlete that he wanted to, and give him the potential in order to really thrive in the juniors and the seniors. And I think after that, he went into competitions and he was medal placement. Every setback that happened, Mikhail Shaidorov seemed to always adapt. There was no ice. He trained elsewhere. If there was a different coach, he adjusted. Different country, he adjusted. Different culture, he adjusted. He tried to do is find a solution. When he didn't have the support from the federation, he found sponsors. He found his father helped him. He kept training, trying to improve, and that mentality of I want to do better, I want to seek and improve. But really the hero within the whole story is that his father did a lot. He tried to train him up from a very young age, worked his way up, gave him that ability to adapt to situations where he couldn't do, gave him the drive. He coached him, drove him, sacrificed financially. He sold his car. He relocated in order for his son to really seek better for his future. And he also transitioned, he was the one that coached him, and then he transitioned to a different coach. Of course, it must be really hard when you've trained your kid up and it's hard to let go, but ultimately, he understood that it's all for his development. One thing that Shaidorov's father always tried to encourage Shaidorov is not to chase any medals, but to chase being the athlete that you want to be and growing. And that long-term development philosophy really helped Mikhail Shaidorov. If a competition didn't go well, he saw mistakes that he needed to do and he improved. And every competition, he got better and better. He started off being top 10, and then he moved his way up to being top 3, top 2, even winning. Because he was improving a lot in Russia and he was training, naturally, when it came to the Kazakhstan national championships, he was one of the few that trained outside of Kazakhstan, and his progress was very seen. He was doing quad jumps at that time, when in male skating in Kazakhstan, they didn't do that. And naturally, he knew that he was better than most of those people. But for some reason, the judging, they did feel quite jealous as such, or underscored him significantly. And Shaidorov knew that he was being underscored. He was not becoming the champion of Kazakhstan. They purposely wanted to undermine him. Maybe because he wasn't training in Kazakhstan, he was training in Russia. And that feeling that he was progressing, getting much stronger than the people that were training in Kazakhstan. And he felt that he couldn't just pleased with his performance. He had to do something else. It wasn't enough. And again, this created kind of a distrust between him and the federation that then later on carried on why he didn't seek any state funding until he started winning. The following year, he got better and did win the championships of Kazakhstan, because I think in the media, people were saying that he was underscored and a lot of people were on his side about the whole situation. A lot of the time when he was younger, it was just him and his dad that were coaching. Whenever he went to competitions, other people internationally, or the athletes, had a team that was supporting him. They didn't have one coach. They had a whole team. They had doctors, they had nutritionists, they had multiple coaches. It was a really whole team that was there. And it's very interesting because he says that an athlete alone cannot succeed. They need a strong team. A team including a coach, a physical trainer, a choreographer, a specialist, a doctor. All of this needs to be paid for. And because he was seeking funding from private sponsors, he was able to then collectively pay for choreographers, for coaches, for physical trainers, to be able to really collect a big team for him to really succeed. So again, it just says that an athlete isn't the whole ecosystem, it's the product. The team is there to really support, encourage, and make sure the athlete is built up to the best. So when they perform at competitions, it's not just the athlete's win, it's the whole team's win. So at the time when he was still training in Russia, in Sochi, he was becoming one of the best over there. He was doing quad combos, which in men's figure skating, he was the only one that was doing it because he knew that he needed to get ahead. One way for him to get noticed is to be technically strong and doing something that was unique. Because he was doing these quad combos and taking that risk, he got noticed. He was getting in the top 3, and Russia then started offering him a citizenship, essentially. They wanted him to represent Russia instead of Kazakhstan because they saw talent within him. Of course, at the time, Mikhail Shaidorov and his dad looked over their shoulders and said, no, we're going to obviously represent Kazakhstan. That's our country. We're nationalistic about it. Essentially that. That's when it really created tensions for Mikhail, because the next day he was not allowed to enter his academy. He was kicked out and said he couldn't enter just because he didn't want to represent Russia. Essentially, Russia's giving all their resources for him to train at this academy to then represent Kazakhstan. And really, they might have seen a threat in him. But Alexei Yurmanov still is coaching Mikhail Shaidorov, but more of an individual approach where Mikhail has to pay for him, and pay for all the other sponsorships and create. So it was hard because he didn't have any facilities, an academy to really coach at. So he had to pave his own way to an academy and collect a group of people to really coach him. And Mikhail Shaidorov proved a point about the whole situation that athletes always seek better opportunities. He stayed in Kazakhstan out of loyalty. And this is later revealed why he criticized the Kazakhstan Federation and his choice of loyalty. During the COVID times, with the preparations towards the Olympics, it always weakened the structure. The system was already suffering as it is, and he was struggling to find enough ice time, enough academies, because again, he was now doing mostly everything private and not skating at an academy. So during COVID, the months without skating, he just practiced with dry training off ice, essentially. And other countries had different access to levels and recovery systems. Again, the progress depended on the circumstances rather than just the effort. And this is the time also where finding ice elsewhere, organizing music himself, paying expenses himself, arranging visas himself. And that all was for the Junior World Championships, where he then won silver. So all of that, the COVID times where he didn't have any ice time, was training on dry, hard land, whereas other countries had the resources. Then he also had to fund other things like organizing everything by himself, finding sponsors, working with visas, everything else, something that an athlete shouldn't be really focused on. They should be focused on the competition, but he was focusing on other areas. He came out to the junior championships and won silver. Imagine the opposite. Imagine if the federation had removed all that logical problems. They actually funded, helped him out. He just had to worry about the performance. He would have been a shoo-in first place winner. And this has really helped him because the private sponsors pretty much saved his life. Institution after that started paying him a very little salary, but again, it didn't fund a lot of the things. He still had to work out that logistical problems like the visas, like booking flights himself, really out of his pocket. The institution provided very little money that he still had to seek funding, still had to seek private sponsors, and companies really helped him, especially when he started winning. The sponsors paid for a lot. Then with that money, he found specialists. His programs really improved. And it really raises a really deep question where some federations don't want to support a lot of funding towards athletes, and athletes have to seek private sponsors because private sponsors ultimately fund for the athlete's career. Right before the Olympics, when he started really getting the recognition that he pretty much deserved, he had quite a few private sponsors. He then started really reaching out to the federation, asking for an increased salary, a lot more support. He wasn't asking for luxury. He had the private sponsors, but again, he had to sort out the logistical problems himself. Whereas the federation, really, that's their job to sort out all the flights, all the visas, other things, for him to really prepare for the Olympics, which was a year ahead at this point. He started writing to the federation that he wanted investment properly. Only then, until they really saw that, yes, Mikhail Shaidorov was getting these medals for him, and actually for him to represent the Olympics, of course, he needs to have more support. The federation reached out and gave him a stable salary, gave him support, and really helped him out prior to the Olympics. But this would have had to be, an Olympic cycle is 4 years. They had to really help him out at the very start. Support was very reactive. Mikhail had to reach out, had to ask, had to pretty much beg. It wasn't very developmental. There wasn't any initiative that was put aside. Mikhail Shaidorov was the best in the country. Why wouldn't you support an athlete that can and has potential to win at the Olympics? Instead, they could have invested so much more earlier and created more and more champions instead of leaving everything late, seeing if, can they, with their own private money, finding sponsors, can they succeed, can they survive, and then we'll start investing into you. After the Olympics, he won everything. He really proved a point that you can do it. It's possible. Once the investment really took a toll, he started even more training, and it paid off because he became the Olympic champion. After the Olympics, he wrote to the Ministry of Sport and the Federation, and he essentially wanted to write, I think it was 4 pages long, about how he wanted to change the system. Other countries have a really big thought out system like Russia, the USA, China, Japan. He wanted Kazakhstan, there is a lot of talent, but it's not being utilized because the system is not there. He wants people to really develop skating strategically, and that's one of his missions. A lot of people in Kazakhstan was inspired by Mikhail Shaidorov. Figure skating bloomed in Kazakhstan because of him. He wanted to take his influence and build on something, let the federation know that there needs to be changes, that if they invested early on to the athletes, there could be not just one Olympic champions, they can be reoccurring championships. But the federation did not respond kindly. They thought of it as an attack on how they are running their system, being criticized, and they responded very aggressively. They discussed how judging was very political, and that during a competition at the Olympics, there was a judge from Kazakhstan, and she judged, I think she overscored one of the Russians, and then she got a lot of backlash for it in the media press or something like that. And they blamed it on Mikhail Shaidorov and said, you need to ask your fans to sign a petition for that Kazakhstanian judge not to be removed from the post, essentially. So it was just a whole different, they ignored the whole situation and were blaming on another situation that Mikhail Shaidorov and his fans have nothing to do with anything. And it reveals something very common in that sport system. Athletes are celebrated for winning, but the government is uncomfortable when athletes want to raise their voices, want to change the systems, because again, it's a personal attack on them because they're doing something wrong. And again, there's a lot of corruption that also goes onto it. Mikhail Shaidorov is one of the very few that actually has achieved things and wants to utilize his voice and utilize his influence and presence in order to change the system in Kazakhstan, for the people and athletes in Kazakhstan to have better, to do better, because he knows that there's a lot of talent that is just getting wasted at this point. Now we're going to move on to the whole salary situation. After he raised those concerns, the federation was very angry at him, and the emotional part was that after winning the Olympics, he got a lot of gifts. He got a lot of gifts from his private sponsors that funded his career, essentially, prior to the federation then starting giving him a monthly salary. He got multiple cars, he got multiple apartments. The Kazakhstan Federation and the president gifted him an apartment and a car. And then altogether, I think he had like 3 apartments and like 3 cars or something like that, maybe even more. After the Olympics, a gold medal means you get a monthly stipend, but that monthly stipend needs to be signed with the federation, and there's a lot of paperwork that's assigned. It's not like you win that Olympic gold and that's it, you're going to get your prize money, you get your monthly salary straight away. It's after a few years that the whole process really goes in. There was a contract that was signed with the Kazakhstan Federation that his salary would be increased, that he would get more support from the federation. But then after the whole letter, the whole scandal that he essentially raised up, the federation viewed it very negatively. They cut back on all the funding, so he didn't have any of his salary that was promised. I think for 5 months since the Olympics, he was not paid a single penny. Essentially, he was just living from all his private sponsors at the time. He wrote emails, he wrote letters trying to say what's the reasoning. They did not respond with anything. They just stayed silent. And after the interview, now it's been really into the media press. People are talking about it. How comes an Olympic champion is not paid from a federation? And Mikhail Shaidorov says that if I'm not paid and I'm an Olympic champion, I can imagine other athletes that haven't achieved that status yet not being paid at all. The issues really raised concern, and within the media, people raised up the concerns. Then the federation finally spoke up about it and says that they're going to draft a new contract, they're going to try and sort out the issue, and try to basically undermine their mistakes and saying that, oh, we're really sorry. And when the contract was signed, now he's going to get back that compensation. We'll see if it will happen or not. Lots of athletes during this time off season are preparing their new programs, preparing choreography, getting the training. Mikhail Shaidorov can't do that because he doesn't have enough support from the federation, nor does he have the equipment. So he cannot prepare for the next season. He doesn't know whether he will skate next season because he doesn't have the funding. And that just says a lot with the Olympic champion status. We see in different countries, they have very much big systems. Like look at Alyssa Liu, she's an Olympic champion. She's got 7 million followers. She's getting from one event to the other, she's getting multiple sponsors. Her income has probably tripled at this point. She's really living that life. Whereas in a different country, Mikhail Shaidorov, the Olympic champion, is not getting it. He's actually lost his salary completely and is not getting paid at all. And it just says that one system is working and the other one is very corrupt and isn't working. Once you become an Olympic champion, that's not the end. And nothing is certain, nor is it secured when you don't have a whole system set up. The whole interview raises that, yes, he became the Olympic champion, but at what cost? Because the Kazakhstan Federation didn't support him as much. They celebrated his win, but they didn't support him at his lowest moments building up towards becoming the Olympic champion. The athlete himself described having very limited infrastructure, minimum salary, reliance on just sponsors, family funding, lack of specialists, administrative obstacles, and logistical. So the medal that was achieved was despite the system rather than because of it. The system did not help support him to gain that medal. He had to fight towards it without that. And the interview isn't just Mikhail Shaidorov's circumstances. That's just one case study. There's millions of athletes that are very talented but don't have a lot of resources, don't have that funding, and they don't make it in their careers. Mikhail Shaidorov pushed through all the obstacles that he could. He found ways to try and really push through, really develop as an athlete, and he became an Olympic champion because of his efforts. And there are so many other cases that have done this, and a father that's willing to sacrifice everything, private sponsors willing to step in, resilience to survive in the instability, yet the federation are not doing anything to help him, paying a very minimum salary and then cutting back completely after feeling like they had been attacked. But in reality, Mikhail Shaidorov just wanted to improve the system for other athletes to really succeed under it, because Kazakhstan has so much potential and he sees in that, and he wants athletes to really develop. Why are other countries have a good working system and other countries don't? He wants to solve that in Kazakhstan. And this just says how important systems are and created. You guys, I have a report that breaks down the whole Russian system and how each step is carried out and why the Russians really succeed and why other countries don't. And that really focuses on that system is so much more important than people imagine. People think that it's just an athlete and a coach and that's it. Well, if an athlete's talented, then they make it in their careers. No, talent alone does not succeed. And this whole case study really proven that the system, the federation support really does matter. I really hope you guys enjoyed this interview breakdown. If you did, please give it a like, subscribe, comment down below, and I will see you in my next video.